As we prepared to leave for Guatemala, I was expecting to see a society undereducated about the potential health and safety risks they may face. Since part of our course was related to health, I knew we would have a first-hand experience with these health issues. What I found, though, was that while lack of education about certain risks may have been present, the order of priority was the real reason health concerns that may be a huge part of our lives aren't as present in Guatemala. This ranking of priorities is often correlated to sex, economic class, religion, or geographic location. On our first full day in Guatemala, as we climbed Pacaya, an active volcano, I was shocked by how close many villages and towns were in relation to the active volcanoes. Here, you can see just how close the lava flow from a previous eruption came to one of these towns. After asking a few questions about precautionary measures the country and these towns may take, it became apparent that on the list of top concerns, these locals did not see the volcano as their biggest threat, likely because of economic status. This location, due to the high number of active volcanoes surrounding the area, is not prime realty. Often, it is lower-class citizens who live in these communities in these unfavorable conditions. Since this region of the world, particularly Guatemala, has a high rate of deaths caused by volcanoes, it is easy as an outsider to ask why the government does nothing to help these citizens. As I asked our guide, David, about this, he explained that while the government can monitor these volcanoes and demand emergency evacuations when necessary, it is ultimately up to the people. But while the people in these communities may be eager to escape an eruption, the reality of their economic situation prevents this. They may be unwilling to leave all of their possessions behind, or in all likelihood have nowhere to go. The country's lack of regard for safety from this natural disaster may seem like a problem that should be at the top of their list of priorities, but in reality similar situations happen even here in the U.S. Much like these Guatemalan communities, it is probable that many of the victims of Hurricane Katrina were aware of the imminent danger, but had no way to resolve the problem. Also, with an unsteady economic situation that is likely present in these communities, rather than looking to next week, next month, or next year's possible threat, they are probably looking for ways to have today's definite necessities, including food or power. A much more immediate threat to many Guatemalans is property safety. While glancing through a magazine in Guatemala City, I found a cartoon depicting a boy viewing his neighborhood. At first, I was taken aback by the fact that this cartoonist was poking fun at the community's dangers. If homes need to be surrounded by barbed wire and have bars on their windows, it must be an unsafe area. How could this be made into a joke? According to our guide Matt from Old Time Outfitters, when you live in Guatemala, you assume that everything you own is just rental property. Eventually, everything will get stolen, whether it is a car, a radio, or your clothing. This is just a way of life in Guatemala. But what was most interesting to me was the comparison of the upper-class neighborhoods to lower-class neighborhoods in Guatemala City. In the upper-class neighborhoods, homes like the one shown here were surrounded by barbed wire and gates. On the other hand, in lower-class neighborhoods, there was less protection. At most, if there was a wall, it would be topped with broken bottles. This is similar to what we see in the United States. In communities where property crime is less present, such as upper-class neighborhoods, people have more home security, such as a high-tech alarm system. But in the neighborhoods where blue-collar crime is more present, home security may be limited to locked doors and barred windows. In Guatemala, specifically Guatemala City, crime is present, but it seems like the ones who are most concerned by it and have enough money to be concerned by it are also the ones facing it the least. On the other hand, the communities who face the safety concerns of crime more frequently may not have the financial ability, much like the communities facing the safety concern of the volcanoes, to focus much of their attention on this problem that we find so important. On a completely different scale, in Cowheat's property theft was obsolete. While it may have been the poorest area we visited, it was also the safest. This shows that economic status is not the only factor in crime and safety. Here, the extent of security was usually a lock on a door, if that was even present. Rather than people hiding their possessions away in their homes, livestock would be grazing throughout the entire community, and there was never a concern of theft. According to our book, Guatemala in Focus, in Mayan communities the concept of restitution, paying back the victim, and confessing to the crime is much more important than a punishment such as sending a person to jail. It was evident that this mindset was present in Cowheats when we asked why they aren't worried about their chickens being stolen while they wander around. In the lone story of a man stealing a chicken, the man was publicly punished. After asking if he was hungry, if that would have changed things, we were told that there was no possibility of that. Cowheats is clear evidence that by placing community relationships and community safety as a top priority, property safety is a non-issue, as opposed to our general mindset that puts property safety as a #1 issue. We encountered another health and safety concern on our first full day in Cowlitz when they began burning trash. From our standpoint, this is a serious concern. According to Maine's Department of Health, acids and other chemicals emitted by trash fires can cause severe bronchoconstriction and can make it difficult for people to breathe. The irritation of the lungs can reduce the amount of oxygen available to the heart and lungs, which can be very dangerous. Some short-term effects, when experienced in high doses, can be as severe as death, whereas the long-term effects include damage to the lungs, nervous system, kidneys, and liver. Cancer and other chronic diseases can take 20 years to develop when caused by low exposure to these toxins. Children are at an even higher risk because of their body size and developing nervous systems. But while these are our thoughts, in Cowlitz the concern is much more present. There's trash, and it needs to be eliminated. It's cold outside, and a fire emits warmth. While our priorities may include prevention of a disease that could develop in 20 years, for this community their health and safety concerns are much more immediate and include things like warmth and food. Another concern for child health was brought up frequently as we discussed coffee. As a central part of the Guatemalan diet, it is no surprise that babies and children are also drinking coffee. But when we first heard this, we were shocked that parents would give young children this drink. Studies have shown that coffee and other sources of caffeine can cause various problems for children, including osteoporosis or learning disabilities such as ADD and ADHD. At the Philadelphia Coffee Finca, this sign showed that there are also benefits of drinking coffee. While it is unlikely that most Guatemalans are thinking of these benefits as they give their children coffee, it just shows that as outsiders, we are quick to judge and assume that we are the only ones with the correct ideas. From our book, Healthcare in Mayan Guatemala, we learned that moderation in everything is key, and that Mayans strive for balance, particularly in their diet. So even though we see some health risks with giving coffee to children, these risks are likely only when consumed in excess. Also, in a country where many children don't even have the opportunity for an education, why would ADD or ADHD be prioritized as a top concern? We saw another example of difference in health concerns as we watched many women work on textiles. In the U.S., many adults experience the pains of arthritis and chronic back pain as they age. With such a familiarity to this condition, as we watched the women working at the co-op, it was impossible not to think about the pain they will eventually face. After years of kneeling and working on such detail with their hands and fingers, it is likely that they will begin to experience pain. But as we asked them about it, they denied any presence of pain in their knees, backs, or hands. Instead, their biggest concern was the heat. The side effects were just a part of their jobs that they were willing to accept. Yet in one of the textile shops we visited on Lake Atitlan, there was a sign that contradicted the women's claim that they did not experience any knee or back pain. It was an advertisement for a seat that helped counteract and prevent these pains. The seat's producer, Demotech, is an organization from the Netherlands that redesigns concepts and technology to make life easier and more accessible for everyone around the world, with an emphasis in underdeveloped countries. For me, this is an example of an organization, much like many from the U.S., that sees something that may be a problem in its society, but in the local community isn't prioritized as a top concern or may not even exist. While we often examine situations as an upper-middle-class American with good health care and safety regulations, this does not mean that our opinions on the situation are always right. Throughout our time in Guatemala, there were many examples of things that could improve the health and safety of Guatemalans, but there were also plenty of examples where Guatemalans seem to have taken a more productive approach, with more benefits for them than the risks we perceive. My favorite example we encountered in Guatemala was the way women strap their babies to their backs. The risks associated with this range from additional stress on the mother's backs and knees, to underdevelopment in the baby's muscles, to environmental risks such as inhaling smoke while the mother cooks being added for the baby. But the benefits of such a lifestyle are undeniable. The bond that is created between a mother and baby who is constantly in contact would be much greater than pushing a baby in a stroller. The mother is always aware of anything her baby is experiencing, whether it is crying, laughing, coughing, or sleeping. It creates a situation for the mother and baby to grow and experience life together, something that is sometimes overlooked in our culture. My experience in Guatemala offered me an opportunity to see that everything in life poses risks and benefits. Each culture prioritizes its risks and health and safety concerns, and weighs the pros and the cons of each action. Before trying to solve the world's problems, we must individually assess the needs of a particular community and focus on their priorities rather than our own.